The morning sun crawled across the kitchen counter, turning everything gold but leaving silence heavy in the air. Ethan watched his wife, Claire, stir her coffee with the same absent rhythm she used to hum lullabies. The sound of their son Noah's laughter echoed faintly from the backyard. Innocent, unbothered, unknowing. Ethan had always trusted what he saw, what he felt. But lately, the edges of truth seemed to warp, colors bending around doubts he couldn't name. Claire's phone lit up twice in a row, and each time she turned it face down. Her eyes met his for a flicker, the kind that holds a lie so fragile it might crumble if looked at too long. He smiled, because that's what good men do when they start to fear the truth. Ethan sat in traffic, staring at the red brake lights like embers in a long tunnel. Claire's laughter from last night's dinner, the forced kind, replayed in his head. He wondered when comfort had turned to performance. The DNA kit in his glove compartment felt heavier than metal, a secret waiting to change gravity. He told himself it was paranoia, but a whisper deeper inside said it was instinct. Claire watered the houseplants as if they could listen, as if life could still grow without truth. Her phone stayed on silent. The message from unknown was gone, now, deleted before guilt could catch up. She thought about Ethan's quiet eyes that morning, the kind of quiet that already knows. Noah played with toy cars in the living room, the sound of plastic wheels scraping against wood. He lined them up in perfect rows, red, blue, silver, and whispered the names under his breath. Daddy car, mommy car, Noah car. The rhythm was pure. The world still whole. That night, the rain came without thunder. Ethan stood at the kitchen sink, watching droplets race down the glass. Claire walked past him, quiet as a ghost. The distance between them was no longer measured in words, only in truths neither dared to say aloud. The small cardboard box arrived 3 days later, tucked between bills and catalogs. Ethan turned it over in his hands like it might whisper an answer. Claire watched from the doorway, arms folded, her smile brittle. She said it again, the same phrase she'd been saying for weeks. "It's just a phase, Ethan. You're tired. You're overthinking." Her words floated like smoke, shapeless, meant to soothe, but laced with fear. The box sat between them on the counter, still sealed, a silent witness to everything they weren't saying. He waited until midnight to open it. The quiet felt sacred, like the pause before confession. The instructions were clinical, emotionless. Collect, seal, send. But the act felt like betrayal, even if it was truth-seeking. He stood in the bathroom mirror, swab in hand, staring at his reflection. "It's not about trust," he whispered. "It's about proof." Claire couldn't sleep. She sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through photos of Noah on her phone. His smile, his freckles, his missing front tooth. Every picture reminded her of the secret she'd buried 6 years ago and prayed would stay forgotten. Outside, rain whispered against the window. In her chest, a storm waited its turn. Noah woke early, tiptoeing to his parents' room, unaware of the war pulsing beneath their silence. He climbed between them, pressing his small hand into Ethan's palm. For a brief, stolen second, the world was simple again. A father, a mother, a child. Then Ethan's eyes opened, and the truth pressed against his ribs like a bruise that refused to fade. The envelope went out the next morning. Ethan placed it in the mailbox with hands that shook more than he admitted. Claire watched through the window, her breath fogging the glass. When he turned back, she was gone from sight. Inside that envelope wasn't just DNA. It was everything they had built, sealed, and sent to judgment. The envelope arrived in the same quiet it had left. Unremarkable, ordinary, almost cruel in its calm. Ethan found it on the doormat after work, the lab's logo printed neatly in blue ink. He turned it over once, twice, feeling the tremor in his chest sync with the sound of rain outside. Claire was cooking dinner, humming to a song she didn't like, her back to him. The air between them thickened. The envelope lay on the counter, silent and powerful as a loaded gun. He waited until she left the room. His fingers tore the seal before he could stop himself. The paper trembled. Words blurred until one sentence burned clear. Probability of paternity, 0%. Everything around him slowed. The hum of the refrigerator became a roar. He pressed his palms against the counter, trying to breathe through a truth that ripped something elemental from him. Claire returned to find him standing there, the letter in his hand. No words at first, just the air humming between them. Accusation, panic, grief. When she finally spoke, her voice broke like glass. It was a mistake, Ethan. I thought it didn't matter anymore. You love him. He's yours. The words struck him harder than any confession. He didn't yell. The silence between them was louder than any rage. She tried to reach for him, but he stepped back. One slow retreat that said everything. Who? Was all he asked. She didn't answer. Only tears and the soft collapse of her body against the counter. Noah's voice called from upstairs, bright and innocent, asking for a bedtime story. Neither of them moved. That night, he slept in Noah's room. The boy curled against him, small and trusting, his breath soft and steady. Ethan stared at the ceiling, tracing every crack like a map of everything broken. He wanted to hate, to rage, but Noah's tiny hand in his made the world quiet again. The truth was unbearable, and yet, so was the love that refused to die. The morning came gray and wordless. Ethan drove aimlessly, the city blurring into streaks of motion and silence. The letter sat on the passenger seat, folded neatly, like a wound disguised as paper. He thought of every night he'd stayed late at work, every time Claire said she felt lonely. The pieces began fitting together in ways that made him nauseous. He didn't know where he was going until the car slowed itself. Outside Claire's old office building, instinct, or fate, had driven him there. He saw him, Daniel. The colleague she once called just a friend. The way he carried himself, confident, oblivious, made Ethan's stomach twist. Daniel laughed with someone near the entrance, and for a heartbeat, Ethan saw Noah in that laugh, that tilt of the head. The world shrank. He stepped out before his body could argue. The rain began again. Soft, cleansing, cruel. You knew, Ethan said. Daniel turned, confusion flickering before recognition. The conversation was a storm of half words and full truths. It was one night, Daniel stammered. She said you were separated. Ethan's fists clenched, but he didn't strike. The pain was too heavy to move through violence. You took my life and called it a mistake, he whispered. By the time Ethan returned home, the world had lost its edges. Claire sat on the couch, tear tracks dried into salt. She tried to speak, but he raised a hand. No more lies, he said. She nodded, silent. He looked toward the stairs, toward Noah's room, and felt something inside him collapse, not from betrayal, but from love that still wouldn't die even when it should. That night, he wrote a letter. Not to Claire, but to Noah. You'll always be my son, he wrote. No test can measure love. The words came slow. Deliberate. Outside, the rain turned to snow, soft and indifferent. He sealed the envelope not for mailing, but for memory. A promise to hold on to when everything else was gone. The morning after the storm, the world was too quiet. Snow muffled every sound outside, as if the universe itself held its breath. Claire sat at the table, eyes hollow from a night without sleep. Ethan poured coffee into 2 cups, out of habit more than kindness. They didn't speak. There were no new lies left to tell, only the exhausted truth sitting between them like a ghost refusing to leave. Later, Noah bounded down the stairs. his laughter shattering the silence like light through smoke. He ran to Ethan, arms outstretched. Instinct overrode thought. Ethan lifted him, held him close. The boy's warmth cut through the cold, and for the first time in days, Ethan's heart remembered what was real. Claire watched, tears caught in her lashes, understanding that love and blood were never the same thing. That afternoon, Ethan walked through the park with Noah. The same park where they'd once taken family photos, before secrets had names. Noah talked about dinosaurs and dreams. Ethan listened, every word another stitch holding his heart together. When Noah asked, "Are you mad at Mommy?" Ethan knelt down and said, "No. Some things just change." Claire watched them from the car, hands tight on the steering wheel. She could see the bond between them, something even truth couldn't erase. The guilt burned softer now, replaced by quiet grief. She whispered an apology. No one would hear and pressed her forehead against the steering wheel, finally letting herself cry for the life she'd broken and the love that refused to die. That evening, Ethan packed a single bag. "I'll stay with my brother for a while," he said, his voice steady but gentle. Claire nodded, understanding there was no punishment that fit what she'd done, only distance to respect the wreckage. Noah hugged his father tight. "Will you come back?" he asked. Ethan smiled, fragile but real, always. The apartment smelled of cardboard and new paint. Ethan placed his bag on the floor and stood by the window, looking at the city skyline framed by falling snow. Silence felt strange now, not the tense kind from home, but the kind that let him breathe. He missed the noise, the footsteps, the laughter, the soft voice calling him Daddy. He pulled out his phone and typed a message to Claire, then deleted it. Some words were better left unsent. Claire sent photos of Noah, building snow forts, reading bedtime stories, smiling with missing teeth. Ethan looked at them each night before sleeping, memorizing the small details of a boy who still called him Dad without hesitation. Sometimes he replied with a simple heart emoji, sometimes nothing. Forgiveness wasn't a decision. It was an endurance test. Days turned into weeks. Ethan started running in the mornings, his breath clouding the cold air. With every mile, the anger thinned, replaced by something quieter. Acceptance, maybe, or exhaustion. The city became his companion, its rhythm matching his heartbeat. One morning, he caught himself smiling without reason. It startled him. Healing always did. One Sunday, he met Claire and Noah at the park. It wasn't planned. She smiled. Small, uncertain, and he nodded. Noah ran to him, shouting his name, arms wide. Ethan lifted him effortlessly, laughter bubbling up like it remembered the way. Claire watched, hands tucked in her coat pockets. For a few minutes, they weren't a broken family, just three souls caught in a fragile peace. That night, Ethan sat by his window again. The city lights shimmered like scattered promises. He realized forgiveness wasn't for Claire. It was for himself, for the man he refused to become. Bitter, hollow, resentful. He whispered a quiet truth into the empty room. "I still love my son. That's enough." The silence answered softly, and for the first time in months, it felt like peace. Spring crept in quietly, softening the edges of winter. The park was green again, the air alive with laughter and new beginnings. Ethan met Claire on a bench near the lake. The same one where they'd once sat holding hands and making promises they couldn't keep. Now they shared a silence more honest than any words. She said she was moving. A new job, a smaller house closer to her sister. He nodded, proud and sad all at once. Noah raced across the grass, chasing his kite as it caught the breeze. His laughter carried on the wind, brighter than memory. Ethan and Claire watched together. Two parents bound not by marriage, but by love too deep to dissolve. For a moment, the past didn't matter. What was broken had found a shape of its own, imperfect, but whole in its way. Later, Ethan walked Noah to the car. "Can I stay with you this weekend?" Noah asked, looking up with wide eyes. Ethan smiled. "Every weekend you want." The boy grinned, the kind of grin that rebuilt worlds. Claire met his gaze through the open car door. A silent "Thank you." Love, it turned out, didn't vanish. It just changed its form. That night, Ethan drove to the overlook above the city, a ritual he hadn't visited since the beginning. He opened the letter he'd written months ago to Noah and read it again. The words still hurt, but now they also healed. He folded it carefully, placed it back in his jacket pocket, and let the wind carry his breath away like prayer. Months later, on a quiet summer morning, Ethan sat on his balcony, coffee steaming beside him. His phone buzzed, a video from Claire. Noah at a school play, dressed as a paper knight, sword raised, shouting lines about courage. Ethan laughed, the sound light and free. The camera panned to Claire's smile, proud and calm. He whispered to himself, "We made it." And for the first time, he truly believed it.